This is That One Audition with Alyshia Ochse.
It's been a minute since I've had a hyphenate, a multi-hyphenate. And I need to know, what was the original conception? Like, is writing the forefront? Is comedy the forefront? Is acting, dancing? Or you just burst onto the scene as the multi-hyphenate? What was the lane that you were choosing to do first?
My very first foray into the entertainment was it was a comedic play in high school. I was a football player, and then I was like too deep in the closet. I must quit. So then I quit, and I actually it was dance. I quit football because I was told to take ballet in order to get better at football. And I was like, ballet is more fun and no one's physically harming me. So then I quit football to join my school's dance team. And that was like the first, performing. But then at that point, I was still in the closet and I was like, everyone's going to know. So then I quit that as well. Love a pivot. And then my junior year of high school, I was walking down the hall of my school and I heard like just rambunctious kids and being like, there's a bunch of noise. That sounds fun. And they were having they were doing 10 short comedies for the fall play. And I went in and was like, hey, what is this? What y'all doing? This looks fun. I'm looking for something to do after school. And they were like, oh, we just had auditions. You just missed it, but you can come in to be like a stagehand. And I was like, sure, whatever that is. And then by the time the show came on, many people had fallen out, people had to leave, and I had multiple parts. I was like the lead of one of the plays, so I just weaseled my way in. And there was one scene where I had to play three characters at once. I was just like switching hats, and I was like, oh, this is so much fun. And then the director of that was also the director of the improv and sketch teams at my school. So then I joined that. And they were also the director of the musicals. And I was like, oh, this combines all the things that I've been doing. And so that was it. And then I always talk about this joke, how like, it was like she blindsided me to be like, hey, little black boy. This nice white woman who was like, hey, I think you should like, you could do this. I think you can do this as a career. There's a acting conservatory on the north side at DePaul University. You should audition. And I said, sure. So I auditioned for one school and I got in. Every other school I applied to, I was going to go for art. I was a great art student. And so I auditioned and I got in. So I took that as, oh, that's my sign to do it. And then that's when I started. And then I got cut from DePaul's acting program.
What year?
2008.
What year in the program did you get cut? Did you get cut like
freshman year? So like they bring in 48 people and then they cut it by half. So by sophomore year is only 24.
Oh, snap. Okay. So then at that point, what do you pivot to? Like, I didn't know that DePaul works that way. So if you get cut from the program, what do you turn to then as a degree, or what do you...
You have to change your major or transfer.
What'd you change to?
I was initially going to transfer. I auditioned for NYU and I got in. And then they told me I would have to take out a lot of money. And we can't do that. We're not about to take out hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans for an acting degree. I can't really argue against that. So then I stayed at DePaul and changed my major to animation and film.
Animation. Okay. All right.
It's crazy because right now I'm doing the Zoom from the Netflix animation building because I'm working on an animated project.
That's what I just was like, what? Full circle. I mean, we completed the circle before we even really started.
I feel like everything is everything. You can really use all life experiences to feed what you want.
I agree. But acting is still the thing. So once you graduate from DePaul with animation, look, everybody's way into this business is so uniquely to themselves. You hit so many lanes that I'm so curious once graduation happens. Did you come to LA or New York first?
I went to New York first. So even within school, so while I was at school, so my freshman year, I was doing like commercials and like trying to work. I was like, that's the whole point. And DePaul did not like that. They were like, you are here to train. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like,
I'm training for the job. So if I get the job, let me get the job.
Like, I feel like that means I'm an A+ student. Like, I'm doing the thing we're training for. And so my sophomore year, I joined my school's dance team, my like college school dance team. I was also a collegiate cheerleader for a little bit. And I was just doing stuff. I just love doing stuff. And then one of my best friends saw me on the dance team and she was like, "Hey, like you're really talented. Let's be friends." So we joined another like dance company in Chicago. And she was like, "Hey, I'm taking classes at Second City, and I'm the only Black person. You should come take class with me." And my freshman year, I went to Second City because it was only one stop away on the train. And I saw Sam Richardson and this comedian, Edgar Blackman. And I was like, "Oh, I think I could do this." So when she
Uh-huh.
told me, I was like, "Oh, cool, yeah, like, I'll go take class there." And that's how the writing started, is through Second City.
Okay, because you moved to New York. The writing is doing its thing because you start writing for a bunch of comedians, you start writing immediately. And I would love to know, did you get representation right away? Are you getting these comedians from Second City? Like, how are you able to start writing? Because that seems to take off. Of course, when you're doing research, IMDb can only tell me so much. That's the
Yeah.
assumption I'm making, where I'm like, man, he just out the gate is writing great comedy, writing for a lot of great people. How do you get in? How do you get into that lane?
Yeah. So I got representation through acting first. So I was like doing commercials for the most part. So I was signed. My first agency was BMG Models because I was a cute little boy. So I
Still
was doing
are.
like
Cute man.
Kmart. I did McDonald's like a couple. So I was just like doing the Chicago
Mhm.
actor thing. Like I was doing plays. Like I was just acting. So that's how I got my representation. And then when I started working at Second City and I was writing sketch and improv, I started to produce my own sketches. And then that got me into a show where I started writing shows for Second City. So I was taking class and then Second City hired me to be like a part of the companies. And that's how I started like writing for real, because that was like the job. And then that got me to do a show that the Blackening sketch came from. And that was a show that I did in DC that was half stand up and half sketch. And the stand ups in there convinced me to do stand up. So I started doing stand up. And then that's when stand up is what really changed writing. Most people didn't like my writing jobs came because of stand up, which most people would know because like you wouldn't, they're like similar. But I just think credibility wise in comedy, stand up just held a greater
Mhm.
credibility. And if you are able to do stand up well, they know you're charismatic, you can write. Like it just helped me create a brand for myself
Okay, so
so
I want to
that
talk. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
so that when I did go to New York, like my very first job was writing for The Break with Michelle Wolf on Netflix. And that
Mhm.
came through Amber Ruffin, who I met through Second City.
I knew some of these dots had to connect because I was trying to figure out how somebody springs into writing these jokes. Okay, so let's talk about writing jokes and writing stand up because there's so many different types of joke writing or joke style. How did you delineate what kind of stand up you want it to be or what kind of writing you want it to do? What kind of jokes you want it to write? Are you more the one off like joke or are you a storyteller joke?
Very much storytelling.
That's it.
I remember the first time I did stand up was on Thanksgiving in 2016 because the show that I was doing in DC, we had a break. And because I was watching stand up every night, I was like, okay, I'm like, I get it. Like, I understand structure. And I've just been writing sketch a lot by that point. And some Comedy Central executives came to the show and just their point of view on sketch versus stand up. I clocked that and was like, okay, if I'm trying to get in front of the people that I know can make things happen for me, maybe stand up is the way to go. And so I wrote like a comedic monologue that I was like, oh, stand up is just like a monologue. And so I was like on stage and I memorized it and I didn't realize for maybe like the first couple months that like you do the same jokes. So I was just like writing these like new sets every time I would go up.
Every single time.
Yes. And then my friends were like, why are you doing that? And I was like, I don't know. I just
You're like, I'm
assumed.
an idea generator. I'm
I was
just
just
going
like,
to
I
keep
assumed that like
generating new ideas.
I
That's
thought that was
incredible.
the job. Like I was like,
Yep.
oh, that's the thing, right? You just kind of, and then they were like, no, yes, but then you perfect it and you like, so that kind of started it. But yeah, naturally, I think there, once I did stand up, I just saw how many skills I already had made
Hmm.
stand up easier. And that gave me a lot of confidence to do it quickly because there was this whole idea of you got to do it for 10 years to get good. And I was like, that makes sense if you've never spoke on stage before. Because you
Mhm.
have to learn a lot. You have to learn stage presence. You have to, and I already had a lot of the qualities that made me good at stand up. So it
You
just
just jump the line
quickly.
faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I can follow some through lines here. Blackening, one of the funniest scripts, ideas, execution. I more people need to see this. So
Agreed.
I'm so glad you're doing the sequel. I was so sick this week and it gave me so much joy. It was hilarious. So you said that you started this in a conception of a stand-up sketch kind of idea.
Yes.
How? Yes, okay. I would love to know conception of idea. I would love to know execution from sketch to then getting it on the big screen and getting it out there.
Yeah, I love the story because I think it's just like beautiful. It's just one of the things that gives me a lot of like joy and hope and feels very specific to me. It's just been like, oh, this is like my story. And you just really don't know what is going to come from the things that you do. So
Mhm.
Second City had this show. So there was like a whole thing where Second City the diversity was not the best. So there
Mhm.
wasn't a lot of opportunities for the Black people to work together because we were all like tokenized and put in different ensembles. So they did an all Black sketch show because we were like asking, being like, please, can we just do an all Black sketch show? It was called Afrofuturism, and we needed a opening sketch. So I was tasked to write an opening sketch. And I remember I was sitting on my couch, I was a little high, just be like, what is this sketch gonna be? I gotta write a sketch. And I was watching, I forget what exactly I was watching, but I was watching horror movies. And I was trying to figure out a parallel between horror movies and Second City, where I was like, I want to actually make something meta that's like a sketch about about the tokenism at Second City, but I don't want to just talk about that. It needs to be in a packaging that is different. Like I need like a metaphor or something to go for it. Then I was like, oh, similarly to in horror movies, like if everybody was Black, then they would have to change the structure of the movie, similar to how at Second City, now that everybody's Black in the sketch show, things are have to change. And so that was the parallel of me being like, oh, this is funny to me. And that's where the sketch came from. I wrote it, we did it, and then they put it in the bigger show in DC. And
Mhm.
then my improv group Threepeat had a Comedy Central deal, like a web series sketch deal. So then I pitched that sketch to them and they picked that as the first one that they filmed. So we filmed it. It
As a sketch, though, right?
Yes,
Just as a sketch, a standalone, like
a
three to
standalone
six
sketch.
minute, like, yeah.
Yep, that was on Comedy Central and YouTube, and then it went viral. And we were like, "Whoa!" And I've never had anything like go viral. I was just like doing stuff because it's
You
Chicago. It's not.
weren't doing the formula of, I want this to go viral. You were
Yes,
doing the work.
I was just like, "This is funny to me. This is a
So
funny
funny.
premise." And then it went viral, and that's when Tracy Oliver saw it. And then she called the theater because my group Threepeat, we had a Monday show for 2 years. We were just like building up an audience. And so she called the theater and was like, hey, who wrote that sketch? And then I got a call from Tracy Oliver one day being like, hey, this could be a movie. And I said, okay. And then and then we started the process. We like sold it. It was made. Then it was like TIFF, Tribeca, and then it came out. And to this day, I could not have told you that is what would have came from me sitting on my couch being like, hee, all Black people, horror movie, ha.
It's so good. Okay, so from the time she calls to the time that we see it in theaters, how long is that? Because I think actors need to understand the writing process. You are so in a great seat of understanding process from start to finish as the writer. But I think sometimes actors, we come into this not knowing the labor that has gone into this specific story to get to screen. So, yeah, what was the duration from the time she called you to you going to the movie theater and watching it with a crowd?
Oh, wow. So the sketch was written in 2016. She called in 2018. That I think that's when the deal closed for
Closed.
to write it. Wrote it and filmed it, I think in 2020, because it was still COVID. It was rough. And then it came,
Came out 2022.
yeah, it was in TIFF in 2022. And then came out the summer of 2023. And I was told like this is quick. And I was like, quick.
And I think also, I love hearing your story. I love hearing people's stories because when you become a writer, you write something for yourself. Were you intending, obviously, to write this for yourself because it was a sketch that you were participating in? But we don't get to see how long the timeline is when we create something for it to get out into the world. That was essentially a 6-year march for people to get to see you. Now they're getting to see you for stand up. You're still going in every once in a while for, you might be going in a lot more than I know for auditions and stuff. But to be able to really showcase your talent, not only as a writer, but as an actor, that was a 6-year journey for people to discover your writing as well as your acting. Was there anything before that, or how are you managing two lanes at the same time? Are you able to audition a bunch while you're writing and doing all this?
Yes, and it is. Like it's like a lot of overlap. And even with the Blackening specifically, when I was writing it, I was very conscious of if I want to be in this, I have to do a lot before this comes out because I don't have any leverage. And so like even the character being named after me, I was like, I need to implant every part in the people, like the powers that be, that this is my part. And I still had to audition for it. Like it
You
wasn't
still
my
had to audition for it?
too late.
Okay. I want to hear this audition story. Dwayne, this is like so unique and special. I have only heard this a couple of times before from friends and past guests where they've been like, they put out a breakdown with my name on it and then wouldn't let me audition for the thing that they want an Ashley Williams type. But then they wouldn't let Ashley Williams audition. It's so insane to me, the politics
It's a
and
mind fuck. It is a
it's a
mind fuck.
mind
You
thing.
have your friends text you to be like, hey, so the part of Dwayne, this is you.
You.
And you've been like,
But good luck on that audition playing me. I'd
break a
love to see your
leg.
version. Let's see what you got. Okay, so now let's pivot and let's go through any audition story or roles that you're getting to get yourself to the place of auditioning for your own damn project.
Yes, I feel like I was just trying to do as much as possible. Like I think at that point I had been on like the Upshaws and I was been like, oh,
Hmm.
or like episodes, just trying to get any screen time to be like, look,
Hmm.
I've actually trained in this, like I know how to do it. And I think it was very clear from like the producers aspect that they were like, yeah, no one like you're the perfect person. But I think for people who are like paying for it, they're
The
like, we just
studio.
want to
Yep.
make sure that like we can get a return on our investment. I remember auditioning for Tim Story and he was like, okay, say the words that you wrote. And I was like, this is very funny. This is very
And
funny.
since it was during COVID times, are you doing it on tape? Are you doing it on Zoom? Are you in the room with him because it's your project?
It's on Zoom. So I'm doing like a director session on Zoom, being like, hey. And what's very funny is like my friend X Mayo, who was in the movie, she messaged me. Like we were talking on like Instagram and she was like, oh, I have a surprise. And I was like, what? And then she sent me a picture of the contract for her playing the character Shanika. And she was like, I'm Shanika. And I was like, what? And she was like, you didn't know? And I was like, no. Like I like this is truly my first thing. Like I'm not a producer. Like I'm just like I'm right there with you, girl.
I hope I get to play with you in my project that
Literally.
I wrote. Okay.
But then eventually they were like, yeah, like we just had to make sure that you were good, but like you are, we just wanted to make sure. And I think they also just wanted to know that I would play ball, just being like, oh, like what kind of like I don't think I had a space to be like, put me yet. I was just like, okay, like I really have never done this before, so I understand the reservation. Personally, of course, I just want to be like, just give it to me. But I
But
also,
also, I want to talk about your mental game when it's something that you've written and the person's like, okay, let's see what you got. Since let's see you say your words. Was there any hesitation? You're so confident. You like are so well versed, obviously, in all the things that you've done. Was there any practice to doing this audition that was different than any other? Just you like it.
and I think that's why I felt confident. Like it was a situation and being like, if I don't get this, it has nothing to do with me. That's just because I know me. I've been writing for myself, even stand up. I'm like, I know how to present myself. And if I'm not the best person for this part that I wrote for myself,
Well,
then
at that point, are you thinking then, okay, I'll be a great, fantastic writer? Are you like, you're not taking it personally? You even said you weren't taking it
I mean, it
personally.
would have been like upsetting, but at that point, I
Mhm.
was also just being like, I'm still writing a movie. Like, I was not doing this before. I still
Mhm.
was receiving like blessings in a way that I did not anticipate. So even from that standpoint, I was still making the most money that I've made. I was working with legends. Like Tim Story is like a fucking legend. Like his movies
Yes.
made billions, like over $1 billion. So I'm still like having these experiences that I'm like very grateful for. So I was just having a glass half full mentality,
Mhm.
being like, this is still more than I ever thought that would happen. So if I do get to be in it, perfect. If I don't, okay, I'm sure that at some point I will be able to be in something that I wrote. So I just was just keeping the mindset of being like, all right, but also I was manifesting very hard and also making it very clear. And at
Yes,
that point,
I was wondering if
making it
you were
very
one of
clear.
those manifestors because you've
Mhm.
manifested so much. All right, I'm now curious as the person who wrote it, and now you're on set and you're getting to act. You've been hired to play you, play the part that you wrote for yourself, not to play you, but play the part that you wrote for yourself. And working with legends, but also working during COVID times. What did you learn that was different than you being in an ensemble cast at Studio City versus being an ensemble cast that you wrote and being on set? What was some of your takeaways as an actor on set that launched you into? Because the next couple of projects that come down the pipeline, you got prepped for those in this experience.
Yes, I would say the biggest thing was like the multi-hyphenate aspect, holding multiple hats. Because even during film, like there were times where we'd be filming, we'd have to say cut, and that they call me over and be like, "Hey, so you have to rewrite a scene." Me being like, "Okay, all right, let me." And so being able to like take off different hats and being able to experience the cast, like that was something that I thought was very funny, where they came in with the assumption of, okay, the writer is in it with us. So they assumed I would care a lot more than I did. And so we'd be like acting and they would ask me a question and me being like, girl, I don't know. Just make a choice. And so they were
Mhm.
like, oh, you're like a lot looser. And I'm like, oh no, I come from improv and sketch. Like we set the foundation. For this to be good, as an actor, I know that like you have to make things your own. Like this is now your part. So if we know what we're doing and where we're going, how we do that, there are options. And the joke is the joke. Tell the joke, but put your flavor on it. And they were all pretty shocked that I was that way.
I think that's probably what makes you an invaluable actor as well, which leads to my next question, especially for somebody where it's like, make it your own. When you get an audition, and you can choose any audition that you want, what is that one audition for you? And I would love to walk through it in your process, other than reading the script. Like, how are you choosing to make things your own? Because I think a lot of actors hear that sometimes and they're like, I'm going to stand out. I'm going to do a cartwheel right here. And you're like, no, the script does not call for that. That's not the authenticity we're looking for. We're looking for you to bring yourself to it. But that takes some technique, and you've been
Mm.
working for a long time. Choose any audition you want. But I want to hear how Dewayne goes through from start to finish, from getting the script to going into that self tape or room.
I would say I'll do one of them days because that's like a pretty recent one.
Yeah.
And I originally auditioned for SZA's boyfriend character. And I remember my friend that was doing the self-tape with me, Devere Rogers, shout out to him. He's an actor as well. I love him. We were doing it. And I was like I was putting I'm masculine generally. I'm just like, oh, I know how to play that part. And we were filming it. And I was like, I feel like they're going to ask me to be like Kiki's gay best friend or something. Just joking. And then we turned it in. And then they were like, hey, actually, there's another part. And I was like,
I knew
how'd I
it.
know? How'd I know? And then they sent me that part. So I auditioned for that. And in reading it, I like read it, and on paper, like I think that movie is very referential. And I've watched a lot of film. Like my brain is I just soak in and contain so much. And so I think I understood like on the page kind of like what they were looking for. And then as a writer, I was like, okay, I know what you want. Here's how I can give it to you in a way that you didn't know that you would want it. And for
Tell
me,
me how you do that. Tell me how you do that. What
So
makes
like
you come to that tangible idea? You're like, okay, I understand what you're going for here, and this is how I'm going to show you a different perspective of how to
yeah,
get
so
it.
like comedy, like jokes and kind of the hairdresser, like tropes and figuring out like
Archetypes,
what
yeah.
parts of this character type, yeah, it's like character types. And I knew just from media and being like, if when we see hairdressers, when we see gay hairdressers, how are they usually portrayed? If you ask someone, hey, if you've seen a gay hairdresser on a TV show or movie, what was it giving? And I feel like they would give you a similar answer. So I was like, I cannot give that because that already exists. So that I don't feel like that's adding to the like what this can be. And so I always think about, okay, what is like the most base level of what the expectation of this is, and how do I subvert that? So I was like, oh, I'll come at this from like a different angle. I'll make it more grounded. I'll make it a little bit more like masculine while still giving the hair like because like I don't need to lean into the trope. I can give something else to counteract the trope, and that creates a more interesting character. So that was my place of being like, okay, I
Yes.
will give you my version of what I think this could be, especially as a queer black man, and being like, oh, I want to just widen the ways in which we think about how these characters can be portrayed. And I think it
It
helped me
worked.
get the part.
Again, I think what you're saying too for actors that are listening, you as a writer, you can instantaneously understand why this scene exists, what they're looking for in that moment. That's what everybody else is going to do as well. So they're going to give you this lane in order to just step aside a little bit. What's the juxtaposition within that lane that still supports story? That when I'm watching 27 tapes and all of a sudden I get to Dewayne, I'm like, oh, that's just a fresh, different, that's just fresh. I've seen 26 of the exact same transition, opening moment, hitting the joke like this. Oh, I didn't think about it like that. I'm just leaning in. You've got my attention, but you're not doing a cartwheel. You're still me.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
it really is about looking at yourself to think, okay, my lived experience, what is it that I've done specifically me, that I've experienced, information that I know that I can bring to this that nobody else can. And I've existed in the hood. Like I grew up in the hood. Like I like know what these things are. And as a queer black person, I'm like, I know that there are parts of my life that most people don't know and that's just from a sake like it can't be a trope because not enough people understand it. And so even putting that little sprinkle on it puts a new point of view. And I think if actors really start to figure out like, what is it that I can do that nobody else can? That is bring you like
Yes.
that is the sauce. I'd be like, okay.
Uh-huh. It's
I
going to be a
think,
special sauce every time.
and it might not be a sauce that like they necessarily want.
It will be special. It will be special. And you're not trying to be special. You just inherently are as you are. So I think sometimes acting too is just getting out of the fucking way so you can just be who you are and show up. And script analysis, which you as a writer instinctively are doing all the time. Okay, I'm making some assumptions about how some things fall into place. And I want to know how you end up in the opportunity of the studio. Is it from the movie? Did you do a movie with Evan? No,
I
you guys
I
did.
I
It was
wrote
an an
on one of their TV shows. Yeah.
That's what it was. Which TV show was this? Hold on.
Sausage Party.
Sausage Party. How did
Mhm.
you get on writing with them? And then I want to hear the whole evolution then into the studio.
Yes, I submit like they read like my TV show that I wrote, and then I got an interview. So like I got the writing job just like any other kind of writing job, but then my writing was submitted. They're like, "Oh, this is funny." Then they met me and they were like, "Oh, you're funny in person," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm funny. I'm chill. Hire me." And then they hired me. I worked pretty well in the room. I love like a chill writer's room, and I would say particularly those men.
I
Like I'm
know.
just
You're like, can I just work with you guys all the time? Why do I
and
need
maybe
to?
it's like the Canadian, but they are so nice. They're just like pleasant, and I love. And I don't think people like put enough emphasis on like the beauty of simply being pleasant, of just like being nice to be around, like to make things easy. And so I think I was able to be my best self in that room. And so they saw, oh, you're funny, you're like easy to work with. So when the studio came about, I auditioned. I
You did. Now, did you knock on Evan's door, Seth's door, and you're like, hey, I know you guys are doing this. I'd love to audition. Or did you just let your agency take
the
care of
agency.
it? Normal.
And I just assumed I'm gonna let the people do their jobs because I never want to come on to. I'm like, work is work, but I like to maintain very human relationships. And I know I sometimes feel weird if I feel like somebody's like just using me to get somewhere else. So I was like, oh, I just want them to show them that, oh, they
You
already
can
know
act
what
too.
I
Because
can
did
do.
you?
I can act.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some voiceover for the show as well. So they saw me in different ways. And at the time, I was pitching a show to their company on the writing side.
You were.
And so it was very funny because like when I was pitching them the show, they were like, "Oh, by the way, you got the part too." And I was like, "Huh?" It was like a cool little.
That's what I was wondering because I cannot wait till this comes out.
It's
It's
fantastic. I've
is
already
it?
seen the whole thing, and I think it's really good. It's really funny, and it's so like on a very basic level. I just think it's really cool. Like from like a consumer, I'm like, "Oh, this is cool." The way it's shot, just like it's
Mhm.
just very cool, and I just have not felt like seen a show very recently where I was like, oh, like this is really cool. And I'm just very grateful to be a part of it because it's
So
also full of like legends. I'm just like, I've been so
that's what
grateful
I'm
to work
saying.
with
That's what I'm saying. It's
legends.
legends. Okay. I'm going to dig a little deeper on this. I want to know what your character was. You have to throw this down on tape. Are you taping with your friend again to be like, hey,
Yes.
bud, is this
Same
right?
friend.
Yes.
Same friend. Like that's why we be doing self tapes because I was not booking until and it's that same thing of being like when you are working with a person that like you're having fun with, and he's a friend that like when we do self tapes, I'm like, oh, this is fun. If I improvise, he's throwing things back. Like it's there's just like an
Mhm.
energy that makes it fun, and so you can see it in the delivery of the
Mhm.
tape. Because I do think self tapes can be like not the best. They're
How
not
people get in
best.
their heads. It's just, it doesn't have to be that precious. It's
It
not that
don't.
precious. There's technique to it, there's a style, and you being a writer, you know what needs to be shown for this specific scene to make it work, why it works in the
Yes.
story. So it should be fun. So tell me a little bit about Tyler, because you're reoccurring, but I don't know anything because I can't see the show.
Yes. Tyler is the head of publicity at Continental Studios.
Fantastic.
He is so cute, so fun. And the thing that I keep saying that I relate to most about Tyler is that he's just happy to have a job. And so he kind of exists at that place to be like, I have opinions. Is that opinion worth saying to keep my job? And so you see him exist as like the black person in the office just being like, okay, this is my
I have
job.
stuff to say, but I ain't gonna say. Yes. Okay. And where
Um,
the audition, did you have a couple of scenes in the actual audition for it?
yeah, so like the audition scene is one of the episodes. I can't say too much about it because it'll give some stuff away.
I know.
But it was very much, and it's my favorite episode. But yeah, it was really interesting. And then I got to work with like really cool people. But yeah, I auditioned, put it on tape. I auditioned twice. I think I got like a note to be like, oh, try it this way or try something different. And I did. And then they were like,
So
ooh, love
if
that.
you're allowed to talk about this, because I was just literally in a coaching session with somebody where they're like, how does it work if I get notes on something that is not out yet? And look, for Evan and Seth, we know what to expect from them as writers, but this feels different tonally than what we've seen from them. So I would love to know how you are distilling down what to do for your first self tape. I also want to know, especially since you were writing with them, do you know if they like improv? Are you improving through some of that? And then when you get the note, if you're allowed to tell us what the note is, how do you take in that note and retape? Because some people just get a little overwhelmed now with the notes not being in person versus being
Yeah.
in an email or a phone call where you're like, okay, hold on. You can't, it's hard to ask for clarifying questions. If you're like, can you just play it a little bit more grounded? You're like, okay, sure. Okay. Anything else? It's a little general.
Yeah, if I could remember like the first time, because there was like not a script at that point. So it was just like isolated scene, just like a scene, but like this is what it is. So I just read it and was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna do it to what I think it is, which is I played it like fun. And then the note was, I think, more about like the tone because they had rewritten some stuff. So it was like the scene was kind of rewritten. So it was more not like a note for me per se, but be like, oh, here's a note for this. Like the scene has changed a bit. And here's more context as to what could happen before, what could happen after, so that you have an idea of what to do. So it's not as isolated. So it wasn't like change this. It was more like, oh, here's information that could probably help you
Get the job.
yeah, like here's
Be in support of the story. This is what we're looking
yeah.
for.
So I think, and I think they did that for because I know some other people that auditioned as well. I think they were just, I think they found out, oh, we need to give more context if we want them to do the thing that we want them to do. And that was
Yes.
very helpful just to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. If this is the environment, this is what the tone is. Because before, if it's just like funny lines, just okay, I'm just gonna do something. I hope you like it. Yeah.
So the show that you were pitching to them, where's that landing right now when you find out that you get the studio? When in the meeting when they're like, oh, by the way, you got this. Are you still developing that show with them?
No, it's being developed, but not with them.
Not with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
I know you can't say much. I understand. So that's
I'm like, I just talked
logistically.
about this show truly yesterday. So fingers crossed.
Let me just say it hasn't been sold yet.
No.
Okay. We're still shopping. I
Yeah,
love it.
but there's some movement.
The TV and film landscape, it's constantly changing, but traditional actor training has largely remained the same.
It's focused on a theater model whose main goal is to help you stretch the expression of your instrument. That's why you can have years of training,
From singing study classes to audition classes.
to even an MFA, and still not be able to book a 2-line co-star.
That's why we created the Bridge for Actors.
A collection of tech, craft, and business online courses to teach you the skills that you need to go from a student of acting
To a working actor.
So I want to ask you some business questions because I think you're an invaluable source for how the business works between two different lanes. When you pitch for something that you've written versus auditioning for something, how is a writing pitch meeting going for you? Once you've submitted your materials, how do you conduct yourself in these meetings? Are you the person that's sitting back and answering the questions from the studio or from the producers? Are you somebody that comes in gangbusters? And I know the 20-minute pitch, right? But for actors, a lot of actors don't know what happens in a writing pitch. So how it actually comes to a selling point and getting on screen. So how do you handle your pitches as a writer?
I literally handle them all like stand up. It's a performance. Like that
Mm.
you're just trying to convince people that like your vision is one that is worth money. So you have to, if it's a comedy, they should be laughing in the pitch.
Yes.
Because that's the whole point. Like if
Uh-huh.
it's a drama, they should be feeling things. Like you have to like elicit a response from your audience, and that is your audience. So I present it as such of like, here's the performance, and then at the end is like a Q&A. Just like if I was on stage, it's the
Feedback.
same thing.
Am I getting heckled or do people understand what I just said? Yep.
Yeah. So I take it that approach, and usually like I do like beats. So it's a natural conversation, just like I would in stand up. Like I know the jokes, I know where I'm going, but it has to feel natural. Like it has to, like I'm a human. Like you will be, if you buy this, we're going to be talking and spending time together. So I also have to show you like my temperament. So I try to be as authentic as possible so that it's clear that they're not just buying your idea, they're buying you. Like they're buying the relationship.
Mhm.
So I'm conscious of that as well, where I'm like, would you want to spend hours with me at night as we're trying to figure out what this is and making it like, and that is, I think, something that's very important and helpful to be an actor and to be personable, to have the ability to turn a pitch into a key. Like, 'cause some
Yes.
people don't want to be talked at, they just want to listen. So being able to present your ideas in a way that feels digestible while
Well,
being
even
clear.
yeah, I love hearing it so concisely that they're buying the relationship. Same for a series regular. Like when people audition for, they're buying a relationship. Do they want to be in relationship with you specifically outside of your craft for the next 7 years? Because if you're in a testing place with two other people, your craft is there. Now I think who they're choosing is who they're buying into the relationship. Same with the
Yes.
writer, right? Yeah.
And that's something that they tell actors, like, oh, you're not auditioning for the part, you're auditioning for the room. And it's the same thing with writing.
Mhm.
Like the project I'm doing now, like while I'm at Netflix, I pitched them a film that they said no to. But then they were like, but we have this other thing that we would like you to do. It's similar, but it is that it's the relationship. Like they're like, are you like, first of all, like, what are your skills? What's your personality? Can you make us money? like you have to be real about what are we doing here? What's the purpose? And it is the business aspect, which is, hey, I'm very good at what I do and I can make you money. But also it'll be fun while we do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in relationship, because I think so many actors show up and they're like, I'm going to be with the top agency tomorrow and I'm going to da 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 da. When does CAA come into the mix? Is it once Blackening is on its way? Is it before? Is it after? When does that relation, when did they say, I'm buying into Dewayne Perkins? And because they usually come a knocking. It's not usually the reverse unless it is the reverse for you.
And I remember my manager when I was with APA, which is now
Mhm.
AIAG. And there was just a period where I felt like there was like a shift. I had sold a couple shows by then. Like I was just like working and I was like, okay, as a multi-hyphenate, I'm trying to elevate. And I have very specific goals of what I want to do. And so getting signed was, I would say, a 3-month process for, so I had it was like CAA, WME, UTA, and then APA they all were like, okay, who are you going to stay? Are you going to go with them? And so I had each of them like present a presentation. They had like slideshows. I was like, I need to know what is your plan? Like, I'm not trying to just sign with a bigger agency for the sake of it. I need to know who am I going to have access to within this agency? This is huge. Am I
Mhm.
actually going to be like have access to people or am I going to get lost? And so that was it was like multiple meetings, like dinners, lunch. I was like, no, I've done the pitch. Now it's the reverse. Like, why should I sign with you? Prove to me. Why should I
Uh-huh.
sign with you? And that really let me know who wanted me.
Yes.
Being courted. And I was like, okay, then court me. Do it.
I love this. Was it after Blackening already came out or was already in process when you had all these meetings that were set up? Do you remember where in your trajectory of, because usually for the bigger agencies to come after you, they're seeing dollar signs. So is it after the Upshaws? Is it like while you're in development for Blackening or
Okay.
post?
So what was happening is that like there's like a process where I think through
Mhm.
before the blackening, there was like interest, but I didn't feel like that was the time.
Okay.
And so I think
Yeah.
like that, because I was doing well with the people that I had.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm not moved by like the glitz and glam. I need to know like in reality, this is already hard. So like I need to know that this is going to actually help progress me
Mm.
somewhere and not just be like for vanity's sake. So the first time that I was offered to sign with CAA was I was still in Chicago working at Second City. They came to a festival. And in that festival, I had a digital short, I did stand up, I did Afrofuturism. Like they just saw me in many different ways and they were like, "Oh, you're eating this up. You should come to LA." And I was like, "No." Like I don't have enough like money as a human. I don't like
Mhm.
that would not work for me. Maybe you have a vision, but I don't have the like money to like sustain. I have to do that first because I cannot create art if I'm worried about if I'm gonna be homeless or not. Like it's just not gonna
Mhm.
work. I appreciate it, love that. So then time passed,
So you passed on the,
and
huh,
then
I love this.
I moved to New York, was like writing, getting jobs, and the opportunity. And then at that point, I was like, and this is very funny because I reached out and was like, "Hey, I think I'm ready," and then they said no.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh no, did I miss my chance? But I was like, whatever. It's like I'm still like working. I just think at that point I was like, oh, I just want something to make me feel like I'm progressing. So I do think even at that time it wasn't the best. I just think I wanted to feel validated. So then by the time I moved to LA and I was like working and doing stuff, by the time the Blackening came out, they were just like enough to where they were like, hello, like you, and I felt because of the work that was happening that it was like that was the time for me to step up and really start to think about, okay, as a career, as I start to build my brand as a creator, who's going to help me build this
Yes.
empire that I'm fantasizing about. And so that's when they came. I think it's like a year. I'm trying to figure out like the exact date and
Well,
time.
even that in the timeline, I think is so helpful For an actor to realize, for a multi-hyphenate to realize, it takes time to figure out what your brand and business is, where your strengths are. So if you'd be willing to share, when you were sitting down to all these meetings, in that initial meeting, you were more or less pitching what your idea is for the brand. So what was your idea at that point where you were seeking out team members? Because I think it's such an invaluable thing as an actor. We come in and we're like, we create a hierarchy with our teams. We're like, please, will you be my agent? Will you represent me so I can get opportunity? I love hearing your perspective of, no, I'm not ready for that. I need more opportunity to understand what I want. And then here's my business plan. How can you help me with my business plan? So what was the business plan conception that you were pitching to all of them that then they got to reverse pitch and court you to pick them?
Yes. So something that I did that I think helped a lot was I told them to come to me with what they think my plan should be. I know what I want. What do you want for me? Because that is very telling of who you think I am, what you think my worth is. And so that was the determining factor, is me being like, from your point of view, like, what is your path for me? And then I compared what I wanted to what they wanted to see how similar that was. Because
So
I feel like
CAA.
I'm very unique.
Uh-huh.
And so if you are presenting me with a path that feels like anybody could do it, then maybe you're not for me because you are not seeing me the way I see myself.
I love this. So for the courting, CAA won the court.
They did.
What did they present where they saw you as a multi-hyphenate and where they wanted to take you to the next level? What was the alignment?
Their whole angle was, we want to do what you want to do. And I said, exactly. That is because there were like other people who were like, oh, like you can do this. This is like basically presenting like a path to like fame. And me being like, you don't know. I don't care about fame. Like I want power. I want access. I want to be able to make the things I want to make. My brain, as you know, I was doing new stand-up sets every time. Like I have
Yes.
almost an obsessive amount of ideas. Like I want to create. And that has been the biggest struggle, is like, how do I get into spaces where I'm able to not just facilitate other people's ideas, but bring my own to life? And their plan was all based around like, so here's how like we get you to make your movies, make your TV shows. So it was all around like Dewayne, the creator. And I was like, thank you so much. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
That couldn't be better. To start this interview at the beginning where you're like, I went to a theater class and now I am playing 3 people. I'm trading hats literally in a scene. To then taking, 10 years later, 12 years later, you're in an environment where you're like, okay, I want a seat at the table for all of these lanes. How are you helping me get to those lanes? Because I know I can do them. Really, I do think at the end of the day, great creators, it's the company that they keep. And that's what allows us to be able to see it at the end of the day. Doesn't mean we don't have great creators sitting all over the place right now, but there is collaboration that needs to come in play. And there's decision makers and opportunity makers that can come in. But hearing your awareness around yourself and your creation early on in your career, in the middle of your career to where we are right now, I think is what makes you a powerful dynamic and hat trader. It's really dynamic. I'm so grateful that you did this show and were able to pull back the curtain on how you've been able to do all of this, because you are an unbelievable talent. You're so funny, and to be able to create stuff for yourself. I don't know if anybody would have written for you how you can truly show up on screen. Like Blackening might be one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen. The fact that you're not only starring in the thing that you wrote, but you wrote this. Love it. Can't wait to see what else comes out of your brain.
Like that means so much, because literally my freshman year of college, I was like, that's why I was working, because I was like, no one's going to do the things that I want to do. Even then, we were doing like all these plays, and I was like, I am so young and funny. That's not what I want. Like they were just saying, these are the boxes you fit in this theater world. And I was like, I don't fit in any of them. Like we have to make a new box. And they were like, no, shut up. And I was like, I gotta go make a new box. Because even now, I'm like, they're still not like, where are Black gay men being leads of movies? That's just not a thing and I was like, if I'm going to be a lead of a movie, I can either wait for somebody to do it and then beg them to be in it, or I just have to do it myself.
I'm so glad you did it yourself. Okay. So Blackening the sequel, where are we at with this right now? And do you need a white girl? I'll be your token. I'm just saying.
There's
It's
one.
so good. It's so good. I want to know.
We're still like writing and developing it, but I love it, and I really hope it moves along pretty quick because I just would love to see it on screen as soon as possible.
I cannot stress it enough. I've literally in the last week, I'm like, have you seen this movie? I shared it with people. I'm like, have you seen this movie? This is incredible. It's just great. It's just so chef's kiss. And I'm glad that's the thing that kind of started the films that you were in. I really I cannot. And then what else we got going on? Because you've got 5 or 6 other things also in development at this rate. You're working on an animation here.
I am on script right now for 4 things. And I'm trying to hurry up and write them so I can get back to being pretty on screen. I'm like, people put me on this
How
stuff.
do you do this time management? Okay, so as a writer with 4 things and basically in development right now, last thing, because I think this is a good takeaway. As a creative, we get to make our own schedules. And sometimes that is the daunting part of being a creative, that there's no clock in, clock out. How are you switching between 4 different things in development right now? What is your day, even today? How do you handle what you're doing every day and what project needs to be taken care of?
I really have to create schedules like for myself. Like I compartmentalize in a way that it was a muscle I had to train. Like literally yesterday, somebody brought up like a character from one of the projects, and I said, "Who?" And they were like, "How do you not know?" I said, "Oh, I've closed. Like that is in a place that I don't have to. I schedule out like times to think about things where I'm like, oh, this project, I'm going to mentally think about this for this amount of time. Once that time is done, I will not put any energy into that because I can't. Like I did that. And if I go very hard, do what I need to do, and I move on to the next thing, and I'm putting all my eggs into that basket because I can't hold it all at once. So I hold them all individually and try to give them like all the love that I can. Because once that love is done, baby, I'm not thinking about that. Until I need to.
That's great.
And then when I need to, I turn off one switch and turn on I can turn my brain off very easily on something where I'm like, that is in the back.
Done.
Once I bring it to the front, then it's in the front. Then I put it back in the back.
It's really remarkable. It's
just
remarkable.
the
I
changing
can't wait
back.
to see all the other things that are getting ready to come up. Where can everybody follow along with you? And
You can follow me on the internet at Dewayne Perkins. That's DEWAYNE Perkins. I think that's consistent on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. All the same.
and we have the studio coming out in Apple. And
It's March 26th.
Cannot wait. Cannot wait. And then people can go watch Blackening. They can do
You can.
you
It
can
is
go-
streaming. Please go watch it.
Please, let's put some more money in your pocket for your brilliance. Thank you
Yes.
so much for doing this and letting me pick into how you're doing everything. This is an invaluable lesson.
Thank you. Absolutely.
When you have time in your elder years, turn around and teach how you did all this. I'm just saying.
This is why I love Little Panel. Like I love just like because I do think the lived experience is one that like you can learn so much from.
Yeah, and yours experience is dynamic. Wow.